How's everyone doing today? Woo! All right, so my talk is the Rollups strategy to defend Cosmos. Wow, it's pretty much a zoo in here. But, all right, so the talk is the Rollups strategy to defend Cosmos. I'm Yaz. I'm the head of DevRel at Celestia Labs. So let's start by thinking about the Cosmos community as it exists today. What did that look like? You can imagine Cosmos to be a fortress. You can look at Gateway and Nebular Summit, Cosmoverse, like it's all a part of the community that we call the Cosmos Fortress. So the Cosmos Fortress today successfully created developer adoption around what we call as Appchains. Developer toolkits right now allow deploying blockchains easily. The interchain provides an interesting community dynamic, which is the whole of Cosmos is stronger than its parts. And finally, Cosmos developers are very unique in Web3, where they combine the strengths of two types of development, app developers and core developers. But there's a problem. A dragon flies over the Cosmos Fortress. Now, what is that dragon exactly? Let's find out. So here's the problem. The cosmic dragon reflects the problem found internally within Cosmos, so it's a threat from within Cosmos rather than an external threat. There's a problem of fragmentation versus decentralization, where the difference between fragmentation and decentralization is consensus. And Cosmos community often has a problem with reaching consensus. So that's the thin line between fragmentation and decentralization. There's also politics which hamper the growth of Cosmos. There's a lack of cohesive narrative. Now, we talk about the interchain, but I don't even know what the interchain means. From a developer point of view, it doesn't mean anything. From an adoption point of view, it doesn't mean anything. It's not really a cohesive narrative. Appchains with consensus means few things. You're going to get mercenary behavior in validators, where a validator for one Cosmos chain wants to validate on another Cosmos chain without actually contributing much to the larger Cosmos ecosystem, rather than just providing validator services. It's what we call mercenary validators. And then it slows down developer adoption because consensus is really expensive. So if I want to deploy an app chain, let's say I want to deploy an NFT app chain, I have to worry about validators. Now, why would you want to worry about validators if you're a developer? You shouldn't be worrying about validators. So the problem is consensus is very expensive. We'll also hit scalability issues with larger adoption of Appchain. So if you have an Appchain which gets a lot of adoption, you're going to get into scalability issues because the transaction costs increase over time, which kind of hinder the adoption that you're looking for from your users. It will also, on-chain governance is terrible governance. I hate on-chain governance. We'll talk about why later. And there's also a lack of core dev culture and storytelling. But now that we defined the problem, let's talk about the opportunity. So what is available to Cosmos community right now? We have Cosmos SDK, the best tool to start a blockchain right now. Tendermint is battle tested. Everyone's using Tendermint. IBC, as a built-in bridging mechanism, has the best developer experience and the best user experience. Cosmwasm is a great new avenue for developer adoption because you have a new language for execution environment that allows you to build with a new kind of programming language. And Cosmos can also embrace more storytelling. And Cosmos currently embraces modularity, but it's more like software modularity, not blockchain modularity. So there's three strategies that you can use now to defend Cosmos against the dragon. You can have an escape plan. You can have a defense strategy. And you can have an attack strategy. So you have three different strategies for how you defend Cosmos and the Appchain narrative. We're going to go over them one by one. Escape. What does escape mean? Escape means maintaining the status quo, where Cosmos continues lacking a standardization and specs around its core development. So, like Cosmos SDK IBC might lack a lot of substantive, specifications and standards. Cosmos continues not having an effective narrative and storytelling. Again, we talk about interchain, but I still don't know what the interchain means. And it continues embracing Appchain thesis with mercenary validator culture. And finally, it continues its on-chain governance practices. Now, suffice to say, escape is a bad idea. We don't want to escape the fortress. We got to defend the fortress, right? So let's talk about the next strategy. Defense. How do you defend Cosmos? So what is worth defending? We have IBC, Cosmos SDK, Comet BFD, and Cosmosm. Now, how do you reinforce the walls for your fortress? You can create standardization and specs around your key modes, and you can innovate on better hard fork mechanisms. Hold on. What do you mean by standard and specs? I'll tell you what we mean. So in standards and specs, you can think of it like allowing improvement proposal to exist. Think about Ethereum with the EIP process or IEFT process. It allows for standard and spec with a great kind of like body for off-chain governance. It slows down core development, but it helps decentralize it and increase core developer contributions. It increases storytelling. Core developers can be champions of their proposals and get more viewership on their proposals and stuff. So they're like heroes on their journey, to support Cosmos. Whether you have a proposal for maybe improving Tendermint or something else. They also add skin in the game. So if you have an idea, make a proposal. And this, in turn, increases client diversity on the Cosmos SDK, which is really important to have. So how can Celestia help on the defense strategy? So we kickstarted what we call the Celestia Improvement Proposal process. So it's an opportunity to help incubate Cosmos core development work by the Celestia community. It contains an initial roster of Cosmos core devs willing to participate in the process, and more are welcome to join. And it introduces something that is not available in Cosmos at the moment, which is what we call rough consensus, which is technical decision making on, such as in the EIP and the IETF process. And currently, there are 4 working groups in the CIP process. One is on the consensus layer, one is on the data availability layer. We have a ZK working group, and we have the interface working group. So if you guys are interested, come participate. There's a lot of Cosmos folks participating in the CIP process right now. So is there anything else we can do to improve defenses? It turns out there is. We can change the hard fork mechanism in Cosmos chains. So here's the current model for how hard forks happen in Cosmos. Validators vote on a block using on-chain governance. So there's a block in the future that we're voting on. This is when the hard fork activates. They download the new binary, which changes to the new network upgrade. But they run a software called Cosmovisor, which has 2 binaries, which is the existing binary that you have for your chain and the new binary that had the new hard fork features. At hard fork block activation time, Cosmovisor switches binaries in real time, which is insane because now you're introducing a lot of coordination costs. With this mechanism, validators around the world all have to be online around the time of the hard fork, which is a lot in coordination costs. And it leads to chain stalls, like Cosmos Hub, chain stalled. Think of it this way. It's like Batman had to swap car engine on a moving car while the car is moving in real time. It's kind of insane. Well, there must be a better way. We should adopt an Ethereum hard fork-based mechanism, which is really simple. Use if statement logic on network upgrade. Core dev, you're lying on a call, you're like, all right, we're release the binary with a hard fork block number 30 days in the future. Core dev released the binary, validated, run the binary. The binary doesn't activate the features until you hit that block number. So if you go, if block numbers, hard fork block number, activate the features. This minimizes coordination costs. There's a great lesson to be learned in Ethereum-based hard forks. It's kind of like if Batman changes the car engine in his garage ahead of time, even though the car engine doesn't activate the feature until 30 days later. It's much better than the existing model. But this is not enough, right? So let's talk about attack strategies. How do you kill the dragon? We got to kill that dragon. So you embrace modular architecture and become modular aligned is one way you can attack. And you minimize on-chain governance proposals as much as possible. What do we mean when we say modular architecture? So modular blockchain, which was innovated by Celestia, separates execution from consensus into separate layers. Celestia provides both consensus and what we call data availability layer. If you want to think about the evolution of modular architecture, we started with Bitcoin. Satoshi released a white paper which introduced what we call an Appchain era. Ethereum then came along with the monolithic era where you combine both consensus and execution together into one monolithic architecture. Cosmos then created monolithic Appchain era where you have a lot of different monolithic blockchain with execution, but they're Appchain specific. And finally, Celestia created the modular era. So in terms of scalability, monolithic scalability is linear. If you want more throughput, more transaction, you got to run more nodes. And nodes over time get more expensive. Modular scalability kind of stabilizes fee over time the more transactions you have. So there's a stabilization of fees over time. It also introduces what we call shared security in Celestia. So in Cosmos, with a monolithic ecosystem, consensus in DA is restricted to the app chain. So if I want to bridge from one app chain to another, I got to trust two different validator sets, the one from zone A and the one from zone B. And that means IBC is not as secure. But with Celestia, because you have shared security, you're trusting one validator set, which makes you more secure. So modular blockchain marked a new era for beginning and closing the gap between app dev and core devs. So let's talk about rollups. Rollups are blockchains that post their blocks to another blockchain and inherit the consensus and data availability layer of that blockchain. So in a modular architecture, how does the rollups thing work? It combines the talent of two different types of developers, application developers and core developers. So core devs can customize rollups and they can customize the rollup based on their execution environment needs, while application devs can deploy their own rollup. So in a way, you can see there's kind of like a hybrid going on, which creates what we call a rollup developer. A rollup dev is a hybrid of a dApp and a core developer. They are able to deploy a rollup as easily as deploying a smart contract. And rollups are the natural evolution of Appchain thesis because you as a developer stop worrying about security. When we talk about security, we talk about consensus. You don't have to worry about consensus anymore. Now, I know that some folks think that rollups are Appchain, but when we talk about Appchains here, we're talking about sovereign Appchain, which have their own consensus layer. Cosmos came very close to the rollup vision, where Cosmos developers have a unique strength of combining both the qualities of core devs and application dev. But because of the Appchain thesis, it kind of hindered the adoption of Cosmos because you still have to worry about consensus. You can't deploy a rollup. So the future of Cosmos is rollup. It's not Appchain. So I know this is an Appchain Day conference, but it should be more like a rollup day conference. Cosmos developers can deploy rollups using Cosmos SDK and Celestia. So one other thing for the Dragon, what about on-chain governance? Why is it bad in an Appchain kind of environment? So coin-weighted voting is dangerous. According to Vitalik, it allows for inequalities and incentive misalignment, which creates a lot of attack vectors, where you can collude with other people and influence voting using coin-weighted voting. L1s have historically tried to encourage off-chain voting where possible, but that does not exist in Cosmos right now. Everything is an on-chain governance parameter. So with Celestia, light nodes and shared securities solve this problem where instead of on-chain coin-weighted voting, network participants can vote using a light node. And we're talking about a Celestia light node that provides data availability sampling where you can decide to run a light node for the chain that you want. Shared security allows rollups to fork away while still maintaining the same level of security. So if me as a rollup, I don't agree with where the rollup is heading, as a member of that rollup, I can fork away from that rollup without having to worry about a new validator set because you're relying on Celestia for security. So to summarize, the future's Cosmos can be saved, and the Cosmic Dragon can be defeated by becoming modular aligned and thinking about rollups when building Appchains. So if you want to build an Appchain, make sure it's a rollup. Do not build your own Appchain. It's not worth it. Now, right now, you have an opportunity. If you have an Appchain, you can convert it to become a rollup using what we call a sovereign rollup, especially if you're in Cosmos. You can use Rollkit, so definitely check out Rollkit. You can easily deploy your Cosmos chain as a sovereign rollup with Celestia. So go to rollkit.dev and check it out. One last thing, we're going to release a hackathon around March 18. It's going to be an online hackathon, 45 days. It's called the Infinite Space Bazaar. So stay tuned for more information about this as we come up with more information and announcement about the hackathon. And anyone here is more than welcome to apply. And with that said, thank you. You can feel free to connect with me, Telegram and Twitter. Here's my email. Thank you guys so much.